One way to know when a political tactic is working, the party against which you are using that tactic starts yelling, "Uncle, uncle, stop it!" A group of freshman Republican members of Congress held a press conference today asking for President Barack Obama's help. The Republicans asked President Obama to get Democrats to stop criticizing them for voting to kill Medicare.
House freshmen asked the president to stand above partisanship, condemn the disingenuous attacks, and work with Congress.
Please. It turns out that voting to end Medicare was not a popular move. And apparently these freshmen are not enjoying the consequences of having taken that vote. These freshman Republicans, 42 of them, also put their request for help to President Obama in letter form yesterday, asking him, "Will you join us to stop the political rhetoric?" The vote on the Paul Ryan budget and killing Medicare was almost a month ago. The final tally was 235 to 193. 98% of all House Republicans, including all but one freshman, voted for this thing. Now that they are feeling the political cost of that vote, today's Republican press event was a plea to the Democrats to please let that vote be forgotten.
Let's get past the past. Let's move forward to the future and say, okay, today is today.
Today is today. In fact, today is also another day Republicans can regret voting to kill Medicare because Democrats are showing no signs of letting up on this. In the special election campaign going on right now in New York's 26th district, Democrats' ad nailing the Republican candidate for saying she would have voted for the kill Medicare budget seems to have turned that race around. In what ought to be a very, very safe Republican seat in a very red district, Republicans are having to fight as hard as they can to try to hold on to it. They have sent the Speaker of the House, John Boehner, to that district. They have sent their majority leader. They have sent the head of the House campaign committee, all to this rural district in upstate New York. Not to mention a yet-to-be-determined amount of money from the Republican House campaign committee and $650,000 from Karl Rove's group to wage a fight to which the Republicans really shouldn't have had to commit any precious resources. Today, we learned that the Democratic House Campaign Committee will try to answer some of that spending with some ad spending of their own. The fact that this is even considered to be contested territory, that it is at all a political battleground, is sort of a shocking political development. And it tells you why House Republican freshmen, as a group, are begging for this thing they did to please go away. Joining us now from New York's 26th district is Phil Fairbanks, political writer for the Buffalo News. Mr. Fairbanks, thanks very much for joining us.
It's a pleasure to be here, Rachel.
When Christopher Lee resigned this seat, was there any sense at all in the district that this would be a competitive race, that Democrats would make a good run for this?
No, not at all. I mean, you have to keep in mind this is a congressional seat that hasn't been Democratic in recent memory, probably more than 40 years. It's been a seat that's been held by Republicans like Jack Kemp, Bill Paxton, Tom Reynolds. So this has been just a very strong GOP territory for literally decades. So no one expected this kind of horse race.
I know that in this race, the third-party candidate is really playing a factor. That Karl Rove money is being spent on ads specifically attacking him. Can you explain that dynamic, how that's affecting the polling numbers, what that might mean for this election?
Yeah, we have a gentleman by the name of Jack Davis, who is actually a lifelong Republican, switched to the Democratic Party about 8 years ago. He's very much an anti-free trade politician. He became unhappy with Republicans, switched to the Democrats, ran 3 times for this seat and was never successful. Now this time around, he's running for a 4th time, but this time as a Tea Party candidate. And he's proving to be, at the very least, a spoiler. Every poll so far shows him with in excess of 20% of the vote.
Is that vote coming purely at the expense of the Republican candidate, or is this a more complicated dynamic?
Certainly, for the most part, from Jane Corwin, who's the endorsed Republican. The polling indicates that Davis, while he's drawing from both, is drawing certainly a great deal more from Corwin than the Democrat, Kathy Hochul.
One of the reasons that Democrats tell us that they believe that Kathy Hochul, the Democrat, has been able to get some traction in this race is not just because of that third-party candidacy, but also because the Republican, Jane Corwin, said she would vote for the Paul Ryan budget. Why did she Why did she say that if she didn't have to? I mean, I look at those freshman Republicans up on Capitol Hill, and they got put in the position by their leadership where they had to take that vote. But Jane Corwin didn't have to take that vote. She could have stayed out of that by saying, I would make that decision when and if I was in the House and had to be put in a position to say yay or nay. Would she be in a better place right now if she just hadn't said anything about what she'd do about Medicare?
I think you could argue that she would be. There's no question about it. But keep in mind, Jane Corwin is and she will tell you this herself, a conservative. And so I don't think it's a surprise that she would side with the Republicans in terms of the Ryan budget. And also keep in mind that she took this position about 3 weeks ago when the budget first came out, and certainly a lot has changed over the last 3 weeks. So while she may regret having to take a stance publicly, I'm not sure her stance would have been any different today than it was 3 weeks ago.
Phil Fairbanks, political writer for the Buffalo News, thank you for helping us cover this story. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure, Rachel.
Massachusetts Republican Senator Scott Brown got into a strange and confusing political kerfuffle that went largely unnoticed outside of Massachusetts because it happened in the middle of all of the Osama bin Laden is dead news. It's still a very interesting kerfuffle, and we think we may have figured out why it happened, what happened, how the senator screwed it up, and why it all happened specifically during the bin Laden news. We think we've got it. That's next.